In today's show, Philip Rossman Reich of Locked On Magic joins the program, and we talk all things Anfernee Simons to Orlando. Why could it happen? What might it look like? And everything you need to know. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? You are listening to Locked On Blazers and Locked On Magic, a crossover edition of the program in your feeds on Wednesday, May 15th. We appreciate you listening. Thanks for making the show, whatever show you're listening to, your first listen, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. I am Mike Richmond, host of Locked On Blazers, your past first point guard, and I am joined by what I can only assume is a chucker from the wings, Philip Rossman Reich of Locked On Magic. Phil, how you doing?
I actually only get 1-3 a day. I am a low post bruiser. I'm an undersized power forward all day long. Give me all this. Huh? I will make David Locke very happy here. Give me all the screen assists. I don't need to score. Just give me the screen assists and I will scavenge around the basket.
We love it. We love it here. That's what a pass first point guard needs. Is someone
I'm your
to do
friend.
the
I'm
dirty
your friend.
work. Do the dirty work. We are gathered here today, folks, to talk all things Magic, Blazers, and Anfernee Simons. This has been sort of in the zeitgeist. Me and Phil did a show at the trade deadline talking about how these two teams could get involved for maybe some other parts. And Philip was like, "Hey, man, before you get out of here, can I ask about Anfernee Simons? Because this has been a thing that was, back in early February, maybe even before that, like end of January. This has sort of been in the world. And it remains a thing that I think is maybe not likely because no individual trade is likely, but it's certainly a possibility for both teams. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into like how Anfernee Simons could end up on the Magic, what the package will look like, and we will talk about that for sure, specifics of it. I've got some trades to pitch you. Let's just talk about where both teams are first. Philip, where are the Magic? Like, where do they stand after a season where they maybe overachieved, but they still ended up home after the first round of the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the Magic, first off, are thrilled with their season. As disappointing, it's been a week now since Game 7 happened. And I think there's still, there's always disappointment when you lose a Game 7, especially the way the Magic lost that Game 7. But when we look back at the totality of the season, like this was a dream season. This was beyond anything the Magic could have thought could happen this year. I like to pitch myself as an optimist. And I think people sometimes accuse me of being too team friendly. I had the Magic in the 9-10 play-in game at the beginning of the season. I had them like at 41, 42 wins. So to be at 47 wins, 5th seed in the East, Southeast Division champions, this was a dream season. But what they did in the playoffs, getting to a Game 7, having an 18-point lead in the first half of that game, really showed, maybe this team isn't as far away as we think. And with a lot of cap room to spend this offseason, by some estimates, around $32 million is the conservative estimate. They can get that up to like 40, 50 if they really want to spend some money. With a lot of cap room, it feels like there is a lot of opportunity for the team to make significant strides. And, obviously having a player like Paolo Banchero, who looks like a superstar after his playoff series, now your kind of countdown is beginning, your winning window is open. And so it feels like the Magic need to really shore up some needs that became very apparent in the playoffs if they weren't already in the regular season, and to start taking steps forward to win, not just a little bit like they did this year, but win at a more serious level.
So to my outside eye, and I'll let you fill me in if I'm right here. This team just can't shoot like that. That seems to be the glaring issue, is that the half court offense bogs down because they can't shoot. And Paolo is good enough to be a pretty impressive creator without shooting, and that they could just use some shooting around him. I know that there was some light pushback from the Magic front office about the quality of their shooters, mentioning that they were slightly above average since January, which, congratulations, dog. Congratulations. You did it. You were the 14th best 3-point shooting team for half a season. But what do you think their most glaring needs? You say now it's time to tweak things. What are their glaring needs right now?
Yeah. And shooting is a huge issue. Like we all sat there before the play. I sat there before the playoffs and said, the Magic are going to be competitive in this series, depending on whether they can shoot or not. And in the 3 home games, they shot decently well. They shot, I think those in the 3 games that they made more than 10 threes, they won. And the games that they didn't make more than 10 threes, they lost. It's kind of that simple. That, you know, their offense was good enough. But they had the worst offense among all teams that made the postseason this year. They were 23rd in the league in offensive rating. They haven't had an offensive rating actually outside of the bottom 10 in the league since Dwight left. I really thought this was going to be the year. I was really certain this was going to be the year. So yeah, the Magic need to improve their offense a little bit, but beyond just shooting, and I do agree with Jeff Weltman, who said on edX interviews, like, hey, we shot 14th after January 1st or after the trade deadline or whatever, whatever that was, more than half the season. They should get better with their shooting. Paolo should improve as a 3-point shooter. Jalen Suggs should hopefully maintain the level that he shot the ball at this season. Franz Wagner certainly can't shoot worse from 3 than he did this year. And so there is definitely a sense like, okay, this team can get better from beyond the arc just from internal growth. I would honestly say more than shooting, what the playoffs showed for the Magic is they need point guard. They need a guy who can just kind of organize the team a little bit and set the table for Paolo. Paolo averaged almost 5 turnovers per game in the playoffs. You average around 4 turnovers per game in the season. Some of that is, you have to let him kind of explore the canvas and figure out who he is and what he can do. But if you're going to win at a more serious level, you need to get Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner easy shots. And, they didn't get a lot of spot up opportunities. Paolo didn't get the ball a lot kind of in his spots without a dribble where he could survey the defense. He was often running pick and rolls and leading and initiating the offense. And I don't think the Magic should let that go away. I think they should be looking for a point guard who can play off the ball too. But there's going to be a lot of moments where they're going to be like, we need a basket on this possession. Point guard, take the ball, get it to Paolo in a spot, let him work without a dribble, let him read where the double's coming from instead of attacking a pick and roll and having to try and force a switch somewhere to gain an advantage. That's what I think the Magic need more of. And I think, honestly, the shooting will come from that, from just having just a clear organizer and someone that can kind of put more pressure on the defense, because at the end of the day, it just felt like the Magic were banging their head against a wall, doing the same thing over and over because they just didn't have a second way to create great baskets for themselves.
So is your ideal point guard more of a table setter, or is it more of a guy who can kind of score? Like, would you rather have the Chris Pauli type that like gets you all organized, or would you rather have like maybe a more offense focused, say like John Morant's like a bad example, but you could say it here. The kind of ideal point guard that I'm looking for is someone like an Anfernee Simons. Is someone what about, hold on. What if
we'll get there.
Damian Lillard's young protege? How can I pitch? Can I pitch you on that?
We'll get there.
Similar skill set to Damian Lillard, but that's what I can ask it without being coy.
Yeah.
You're right.
Is
skill set appealing?
Yes, because I think what the Magic are looking for is someone who can run the show a little bit, initiate offense, kind of get you into your basic sets, but doesn't need to be a pound the dirt in the ground point guard. They're not looking for Chris Paul. Like I've seen some people pitch Chris Paul like he'd be a good veteran for this team. And it's like, and I'd be like, no, like Chris Paul needs the ball in his hands a little bit too much. He doesn't really work so well off the ball. The Magic needs someone who can play off of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, so they can still do a lot of the things that they did well this season, but can also kind of take control when needed. And frankly, also can be a guy that can elevate the team a little bit and be a guy that can have a random 30-point night. So much of the scoring for the Magic is dependent on Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner that, God forbid, one of them has to miss a week like Franz Wagner did at the end of the season. The offense doesn't go into the tank because Jalen Suggs hasn't proven that he can elevate his game and be a consistent 20-point per game scorer. They don't need a guy that's going to get you 20 every night, but every so often has a game where they make 4 or 5 threes and they get 30 and it's just their night. Like having that extra threat it would be such a big thing for this Magic team. And obviously like there's only so many places they can fill that in their lineup with the way it's set up right now. They need a guard. They need a guard who can kind of take over at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ant is pretty much like a drop in anywhere and score 20 points a game player. The problem, the main knock on him is that he can't defend, but the Magic have this elite defense, right? And that maybe he's the guy who can make up for it. And it's not that he doesn't try on defense. It's like He doesn't have great instincts, and he sometimes gets overpowered physically. And he's played a lot of shooting guard, and when he's the second biggest guy in the team, yeah.
Yeah, and it probably, like, no offense to Dame, no offense to Scoot, no offense to CJ McCollum, he hasn't been paired with another guard like Jalen Suggs who can take on that lead guard. There's only,
totally.
Cleveland may be the bad example because that's who the Magic just faced, but it's different when you're in a different defensive environment where, there's a defensive culture that's already been built. And again, certainly, no offense to Portland here, when the
I'm not offended. I know that they're bad.
when there's an opportunity to win at a higher level, when you're playing for second round conference finals, you saw this in Portland too with some of their teams. You defend a little bit harder and you're a little bit more attentive defensively when, that carrot of winning is right there and this is our ticket to get there.
Yeah, and the Magic have an identity of being a good defensive team. But real quick, before we kind of talk about, we can shift gears, talk about why the Blazers might be interested in pursuing this deal. Anfernee Simons shot 38% from 3 on 9 attempts per game, but 43% on catch and shoot threes. As an off-ball guy and a catch and shoot option, he shot 42.7% from 3. Like he's a pretty good off the dribble shooter, 35% off the dribble, but an elite catch and shoot guy. And I think that helps because, like you said, what makes the Magic special is that they have these giant creators. They have Paolo and they have Franz. But the thing that they need to unlock is another shooter. And if they had another shooter on the court, I think that would really help. We kind of talked about where the Magic are and why they would pursue this and their needs and their goals and all of these things. And Anfernee Simons fit. I want to talk a little bit in the second segment. We should discuss where the Blazers are and why they might be pursuing this. Let's chat about kind of the Blazers rebuild and the position they find themselves in, because I think Anfernee Simons is maybe their best player. Why are they trading their best player? Let's talk about that in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Listen, if you are going through a singular traumatic event, talking to a therapist, a neutral third party, can be incredibly valuable. But if you're just navigating the day-to-day life, the challenges that being alive and existing in this world bring you, talking to a therapist can be incredibly valuable. A neutral third party to kind of bounce your troubles off of and help you develop the tools to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And then if you need to, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. You can find someone who's right for you, and you can keep working to be a better version, or at least develop the tools to be a better version of yourself. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Still chatting here with Phil Brossman. Right. You're listening to Locked On Blazers and Locked On Magic. Thanks for making these shows your first listen. It's a crossover edition. Phil, I was drilling you on where the Magic stand. I know you got questions about the Blazers. Hit me with them.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think, we've been through rebuilds here in Orlando. Like, we've been through kind of the rebuild ringer. I guess any question about the offseason starts is, what is the feeling about Scoot Henderson? Because I think at the end of the day, the reason you move on from an Anfernee Simons is because you're trying to make Scoot your guy and make him the primary player. Where do the Blazers stand with Scoot Henderson after his rookie year?
Well, I would assume that they were relatively surprised by his struggles. I think Scoot was, for the most part, like painting with a broad brush, bad. Like, I think it was bad.
Rookies are bad.
Early in the season, he was awful, and then at the end of the year, he showed a lot of promise. Right? He showed some. He's like, oh, this guy, he had some games at the end of the season where you're like, oh, he can. The playmaking, the ability to get to the rim. He didn't finish well. He shot probably better from 3 than people thought he would at the beginning of the season, but he didn't make layups. But the Blazers are pretty deeply invested in Scoot Henderson being good. So the fact that he struggled, and I think it came as a surprise to the organization, although they've kind of pushed back on, it's very normal for a 19-year-old to struggle in the pros. They started him on night 1, opening night of the season. They didn't think he was going to struggle that much. they're pretty invested in him. When you draft a guy third overall, you're invested in him. You couple that investment with their investment in Shane Sharp, the 7th pick in the prior draft. They've got a backcourt that's kind of locked in. They're not at a spot where they can say this definitely works and we're going to build around these guys, but they are at a spot probably where they're saying we're really far away from being good. We've made back-to-back investments in these picks. We owe at least one, if not multiple seasons of seeing where these picks take us. Now, you've been in Orlando to see investment in picks that don't pan out. So this is no guarantee that it works. But what you have to do is you kind of have to trust your process, and it can't be a 10-month process. It probably has to be a 36-month process. That's just the reality of making a pick in the top 5 and making back-to-back picks in the top 10. They're going to have 3 consecutive picks in the top 7, and they'll probably be the worst team in the Western Conference again next year. They're in it. They're in it, Philip. They are in the stink. In the past, and I think we talked about this when we last did a crossover, my feeling was that the Blazers shouldn't pursue a trade of Anfernee Simons, or maybe wouldn't pursue a trade for Anfernee Simons, because he's better than the young guards, right? Like he's better. He's about to turn 25, and he's better than Scoot and better than Shane Sharp. And there's no guarantee those two gentlemen ever get as good as he is right now. That's probably still true, right? I mean, it is still true. There's no guarantee, and he's still better than them. But my thinking has changed, such that the team is so far away from being good. And Anfernee Simons isn't a 1A type of star that's going to pull you out of that mess. He is a complementary piece and certainly a very talented offensive player. But my thinking has changed now that because they're so far away, and because Anfernee Simons is probably your most tradable part in terms of value on the roster, now is the summer to move off of him. I don't know if the Blazers organization shares that thinking. I'm not 100% sure they agree with me, but that's where my logic stands, is that now is the time to do so, because even if Ant makes you a little better, he doesn't make you better enough to get out of the mud. He just gets you in another version of the mud.
He's not an all-star. Like he's like,
right.
He's a good player. There's obviously interest in him. He has skills that can work in the league, but he's like, I used to say this all the time about the Magic when they were really bad, was it's not that you have bad players. It's you have players playing the wrong roles. You have, Aaron Gordon trying to be your Paul George.
Perfect
Aaron
example.
Gordon's not Paul George. Aaron Gordon is what he is in Denver right now. Nikola Vucevic was an all-star, but him being your all-star, your top guy, gets you to the first round, as Chicago has continued to learn over the last few years.
They're committed to it, though. Shout out to the Bulls.
They're committed to it. Shout out to the Bulls. Well, like that extra home game, Matt, means so much. But yeah, like it feels like Portland. Maybe you could illuminate us on this, on what Portland's goal was entering the season. Whether they thought, okay, let's see where we're at, or whether they were, it seemed like they were fine being bad again, knowing they have 2 draft picks coming. They have 2 lottery picks coming up, and I'm curious how that plays into some of their decision making. But I guess the place to start is, okay, you've reached this point where you're ready to kind of move on from veterans and collect assets, whatever that is. They spent, they obviously had to kind of make the Damian Lillard trade, which, you're going to get a mix of veterans and kind of be in this transitory period. That's where the Magic were after they made the Dwight Howard trade, where they're just like, we got to get rid of this guy for whatever we can get. And we'll go from there. We have no leverage in the situation. So the Blazers have, a veteran like DeAndre Ayton. They still have Malcolm Brogdon, who, probably also shopping around a little bit right now.
Right. That's another podcast later in the week.
That's another podcast later. That's a podcast we had back in February. You can go back and listen to that. I'm sure everything there is still, I'm going to link to it again. It's still relevant. But so then with Portland having 2 lottery picks, I believe they have 2 lottery picks.
7 and 14.
7 and 14. What are their goals now? What are their immediate goals to kind of set this roster up? What are they looking for to hit that, whatever that next phase is? Again, it might just be being bad for another year and going to next year's draft, which is much better than this year's draft. But what is the next phase for them?
I think quietly the Blazers have a strong plan to be the worst team in the Western Conference next season. I don't think you can say that, right? Like, I don't think as an organization you can say, like,
not good for season ticket sales.
Yeah, like, well, we're going to be bad and we're going to be worse than everyone in the West, and we're going to be, we're going to have the 3rd worst record in the NBA, and that's the plan. And hopefully along the way to being bad, Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp show promise, and then we feel good about where we are next, right? Like, I do think that's the plan. very broadly speaking. I think this year they weren't trying to be particularly good either. They were really young and really new, but they needed to retain Jeremy Grant. When they traded Drew Holiday as part of the Damian Lillard, like the back half of the Damian Lillard trade, they ended up with two vets from the Celtics in Brogdon and Rob Williams. Rob Williams only played 6 games, so like he didn't really get to see him, and Brogdon played like half the season. But they kind of held on to them because they valued what they brought, sort of either on the courts or in terms of their intrinsic veteran value. This was step one of a long rebuild, and now you gotta pivot. I don't think they want to have every single player on the roster be 23 and younger and all that, right? I think they would be totally comfortable with having vets. I think it wouldn't surprise me if Jeremy Grant's still on the roster next season, although it wouldn't excite me either. But so like I think they're going to commit to the young guards and see what they have, and I think they're not going to be aggressive in getting a lot better. They don't have cap space. They're not a team that's going to be active in taking on big contracts and trades, or certainly not in free agency. They're going to try to get better with some lateral moves and probably get a little cheaper, because right now they're a tax team in trades, but they're not after getting way better. They're after asset collection, which is why you move on to trading a guy like Anfernee Simons, because precisely he's someone who could get you assets back. I think the Blazers are conservatively 2 years away from trying to be good. I think the third season of Scoot Henderson's career is when you might see them. So that would be all of next year they're bad. And then maybe next year they say like, oh, we'll be like a play-in level team. But I think it's after that, like realistically, because what they don't have right now is a foundational piece. They don't have Paolo Banchero. They don't have Franz Wagner. They don't have a player who you could say, this is a future all-star or a current all-star that we can build forward with. They're still searching for that. And so the path is to continue the search.
Yeah, I mean, and like again, speaking from experience, like that's the whole thing. Like you know, Franz Wagner is a very good player. This team does not crystallize and does not have this like clear vision for the future without Paolo Banchero. Like there's
100%.
There's no getting around it. Like Paolo is the one that changed everything for this team and changed everything for this franchise. And you have to, you can't try and move forward until you find that guy. It stinks to say, but you gotta have that player. And to your point earlier, Simons is a good player. He puts up a lot of points. He's taken the ball and ran with it when the Blazers gave it to him, but he's not the player that elevates a team to back end of the playoffs. Just
agreed.
On
yeah,
his
he
own
couldn't
merit.
be.
Like
I don't think he could be.
He needs to help.
Yeah, I don't think he could be the best player on a decent team. He could be a part of a very good team, no problem. It's easy to envision that, and we'll envision that here in a moment. But like, I don't think he could be the best player on a team that's like wins 45 games. Like he's just not good enough. And that's the distance between good players and great players in the league is pretty vast. There's a lot of good players in the league. There's not many really good ones, and great ones are even fewer.
All of these guys are good players. Like,
right.
Like we saw Delano Banton. How many points did he have in that game in Orlando in March? It caused panic here in Orlando because of how close that game was. All of these guys are good players. Can you do it every single night? Can you do it and help your team win? It's not easy to put up numbers, but you can put up numbers when you're given the opportunity. Someone's got to score.
A lot of guys can score. Yeah.
A lot of guys can get those numbers. Can you understand when to get those numbers and how to help your team win? And that's the tricky part. And obviously, like, Portland isn't a super deep team. That's partly by design. They had a lot of injuries last year. We never really, never saw them healthy with Rob Williams out. Malcolm Brogdon missed a lot of time. Simons missed a lot of time. It's hard to get a gauge on where you're actually at, and injuries are obviously part of it, and some of it by design, perhaps. But we've all been there.
Only at the end of the season was it by design. People think they were tanking all year. They just were bad and hurt all year. They were bad, though, naturally bad, and then they really leaned into the skid, baby, because that's what they do.
That's what you gotta do.
Few teams have lack of shame like the Blazers. Phil, I think we give them 25-ish minutes here. Letting them just, they want to hear trade packages. This is what the people listen to. It's why they clicked on the damn show, is they want to hear the trade packages. Let's come back. Let's come back in the third segment and talk real deal trade nuts and bolts. And both Philip and I will share some horror stories from the past. Join us in that third segment, won't you?
But first, let's give a quick word for our friends over at Game Time. I don't know about you, Mike, but I'm a soccer fan here in the City Beautiful in Orlando. We got kind of a big game coming up on Wednesday with our friends from down south, Inter Miami, coming up to Orlando to face the Lions. And of course, that means that Lionel Messi is reportedly on his way. Maybe he's not. We'll find out. But if you want tickets to the big game and you have $200 to shell out because that's how much they're going for right now on Game Time, I checked last night. Game Time is your place to go for the best prices on tickets. If you're kind of hunting around, waiting to see if Lionel Messi plays, and if he doesn't play and those ticket prices drop down, Game Time is going to be the place to get the best tickets to go see the Lions face the Flamingos, whatever they're called down in that dirty place in Fort Lauderdale. Game Time is going to be your place to get the best last minute deals on tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and plenty more. They offer zone deals, so you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. They give you all in pricing, allows you to see your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkouts. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, still chatting here with Philip Rossman. Right, it's Locked On Magic, Locked On Blazers crossover. Let's get into it. Okay. We're going to talk real trades here first in a second, but let's very quickly, let me just tell my listeners. Last time I proposed a fake trade on this very program, I proposed a trade that if one of you, dear listeners, had sent me, I would have ignored the email. That's how bad it was. I would have been like, I'm not listening. I'm not reading that. That's just nonsense. So I'm going to redeem myself with one that doesn't suck here. And famously, Philip, do you want to tell your famous trade? This is from last
year. Last year at the draft, we were talking about draft trades, trading up to number 2. I warned you I was going to do this before we talked because the Magic weren't quite ready for a star, but I have the Blazers guy. I had to ask. I asked what would it take to get Damian Lillard. You said it would require Franz Wagner, and I say I at least have to think about it. I think that's how I phrased it. That's how I'm going to pretend that I phrased it.
Don't check the tapes.
I may have been a little bit more firm on like, I would do that. And I was like, no, I wouldn't do it. I was just saying if I were going for whatever. But I'm notoriously bad at fake trades. I will fully admit that. So take that asterisk before
this final 8 minutes of the show or whatever is redemption time for both me and Philip because it's listen, we gotta make good by our listener base. So
all respect to Jeff Weltman and I don't know who Portland's
Joe Cronin.
I thought that's what. All respect to Jeff Weltman and Joe Cronin who have to do this for a living. It is not as simple as putting stuff into the trade machine as you think.
Honestly, though, I did put stuff into the trade machine, so I'm
ready.
ready. I have a specific deal. I'm going to pitch it to you, and you tell me whether you think you would do it and whether you think the Magic would do it as well. This is a very simple 2-for-1 swap. It saves the Blazers a little bit of money. And the Magic, they get Anfernee Simons. That's who they get. That's all they get. Congratulations. You've received my main man, Ants. He's a great off-ball threat. He can play on the ball. He's an offensive player. He's going to – listen, you watched a lot of Cole Anthony shoot bricks in the playoffs. You're going to love the upgrade. He's a little less – he's not as fun on the mic, but he's an excellent offensive player. In exchange, the Blazers will receive Wendell Carter Jr., Anthony Black, and a top 4 protected 2025 pick from the Orlando Magic. In fact, I have a little graphic here on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, here it is. On the website I used, and it's all over this graphic, on fanspo.com. I made this trade. You can only do top 5 protected, which doesn't make sense. Why would you protect that 5th pick? I'm only talking top 4 protected from the Magic. The Magic have 2 picks in 2025. I want nothing to do with.
You want nothing with the Denver pick because I was going to try to hop that Denver pick on you.
I want nothing to do with the Denver pick. I want to bet on the Magic doing what young teams do and losing 2 more games than they did last year. So instead of the 4th best team in the East, they're the 7th best team in the East, and now now you get a little bit of upside there. So Wendell Carter Jr., Anthony Black, and a top 4 protected 2025 pick in exchange for Anfernee Simons. Philip, would you do it, and would the Magic do it?
So I'll say this. My a lot of Magic fans have been focused on a lot of the guards in free agency, Tyus Jones, D'Angelo Russell, Klay Thompson, Paul George. I actually do think the path for the Magic this summer might be to trade Wendell Carter for a guard and then go out and sign Isaiah Hartenstein and kind of beat whatever the Knicks can offer. Cause the Knicks the Knicks only have early bird rights on him. You give him a $20 million deal. The Knicks would have to go into cap room to match that. I don't think they want to do that, although they do have a little bit of cap room this summer. Or go after Nick Claxton from the Nets, like go get your big rim protecting center. So I will say I am very open to the idea of exploring a Wendell Carter trade. I think one of the difficulties the Magic will have when they get into consideration for trades is that I think your instinct that they'll ask for Anthony Black is very true. I think that the trade package that the Magic will have to offer is Carter and Black for a player of Simon's capability and
Simon's
talent.
or above. Yeah.
Yeah. I am very hesitant to let Anthony Black go just because it's really hard to trade young players like him. He was out of the rotation for the playoffs, but he played really, really well. I think there's a strong argument that he should have been in the rotation for the playoffs and for the postseason. But when you look at the Magic's cap sheet, it's really hard to find guys that the Magic would be willing to part with. They're not trading Jonathan Isaac. They're probably going to keep him. Cole Anthony is starting his extension. So that's 3 years starting at $12.9 million. That's going to be a little bit more difficult to move, especially after the season that he's coming off of. Wendell Carter, I think, is the centerpiece of any trade. I doubt that Portland would have interest in waiving Joe Ingles again. But you got to pick up his team option before free agency, before the Magic would have all this cap room to absorb a lot of that salary at $11 million. That's a trade chip, but I don't think that's a trade chip Portland wants to play around with because, like you said, part of Portland's goal in all this should be to reduce their payroll. There's no way they should be an over the cap team or a tax. I don't think they're a tax team. But
no team as bad as they're going to be should pay the tax because
exactly
when you get good, you don't. Yeah, when you get good, you don't want to have because if you're in the tax 3 out of 4 years, you get the repeater tax. So it's like you don't want to have.
There's no reason.
You don't want to have a 4 years ago nonsense season where you paid the tax just
exactly.
for no reason. Like you want to be. It's not even about ownership being cheap. It's about being smart with hopes of being good in the future.
There's no reason to spend money that you shouldn't be spending. And so I fully recognize that this is kind of the framework for that kind of a deal. And so it makes sense. Can you put the
I'd love to put the graphic back up.
The graphic back up.
This is back for our YouTube watchers. If you're listening on the audio channel, there's just I was able to.
I just want to see the shorthand for the salaries. So here's the thing that I'm thinking. Just as a counter offer, because I agree. This is probably the framework for a deal. If you're not interested in Cole Anthony, then this is probably your framework for a deal. Would you be willing to do one of Anthony Black or that first round pick? Because after July 1st, the Magic have $32 million of cap room. They can do Simons for Wendell Carter straight up salary wise, forget everything else, and absorb that extra $14 million. So for Portland, they get to cut even more cap. They get, we'll keep that first round pick. If I had my druthers, I'd say I will give you the worst of the 2 first round picks between Denver and Orlando. That's, that would be my druthers. If you want to put that in play, because who knows, maybe Orlando is better than Denver next year. Who knows?
I'm willing to wager they won't be.
I think that's a safe bet. That pick is also top 5 protected. So yeah, that's a safe bet. That's a sticking point. I don't think we should necessarily get into that here. Let's just work on the framework. Would you be willing to take one of Black or that first round pick to make this deal work?
I would probably just say, give us a crappier first round pick. Like give us that, either say throw in swap out the Orlando's own pick for the Denver pick, because we both probably think that's deeper, even though you're hedging right there because you believe, or maybe that 2026 pick they have that I think they get basically Phoenix's pick or whatever it is.
They got that weird second best of Washington, Phoenix and Orlando coming up in 26 or something like that. And, Although now that doesn't look so bad anymore.
Yeah, I'm willing to wager that the Suns will still be competitive, but there's a chance that they're totally blown up and terrible. So I could understand wanting to hold on to that. So then it's like the Blazers have 2 first-round picks in 2024 and 2 second-round picks, and their roster's almost full. They don't need more picks in the right now. The 2025 draft is supposed to be a little bit sexier, so that's why I'm gunning for that in my negotiation. So I would want a first and Black because I don't think Black showed enough to make it happen. And it's like the Blazers aren't pressed to trade Anfernee Simons. Well, I think they should try to. I don't think they have to.
This season, regardless of when they do it, is the time to do it because
100%.
Simons has got 2 years left on his deal.
Yeah, so at
whoever's
the trade
acquiring
deadline,
him needs that extra year. Yeah, so that and
yeah,
it's the same deal with Wendell Carter. Let me pitch if you're insistent on keeping Black in the deal.
sure.
Can we throw out that? I don't know if you're going to go for this, but can we throw out that first round pick? I know maybe not because I'm asking for more now. So if we're going to keep that first round pick in there, could the Magic get Robert Williams?
Sure.
Okay, I mean, if it's that easy, well,
let me try it. Let's do it in the trade machine real quick.
Now, just I mean, and reminder to all those who might be watching. I don't know if this will work in the trade machine today, but on July 1st, I think it will because the Magic can absorb that extra money into their cap room.
Right. So I have it as based on the new has it on the new season
on 25. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, let me adjust the trade for. There's one little other thing I can do and make sure. And this isn't perfect. It's not like the greatest tool that ever existed in all of time, but let's make sure that we get it the closest to correct that we can.
Yeah. And friendly reminder: we're just kicking around ideas. I'm not committing to anything. Like
Rob Williams, committing. This
Rob
trade
Williams
is done.
Yeah, right. Like Rob Williams would be is like part of the center, kind of the center the Magic are looking for, just a rim protector. The injury the last 2 years is the biggest concern, obviously. But he's got 2 years left on his deal, similar money to Carter. It's a little bit more than Carter, but I'm throwing it out there. He's a guy. I
think the Magic would have to renounce some of their money that's on the books to get there. Like I think the deal works, but you'd have to get.
You cut Joe Ingles. It's fine. You don't pick up the option on Joe Ingles.
Yeah, or Okiki or Gary Harris or one of those guys.
Not losing sleep over. Not
right.
I said,
I think.
Yeah, I've been telling Magic fans this. If the Magic renounce or decline the team option for Joe Ingles, that probably means they're up to something big, because that means they need the money.
Right. So here is our finalized fake trade because we're running a little long here and we'll get you out of here.
Yeah.
Anfernee Simons and Robert Williams to the Magic in exchange for Wendell Carter Jr., Anthony Black, and a 2025 top 4 protected pick from the Orlando Magic. Call it into the league office. And then if you really hate this trade yet again, listen, Philip and I told you our horror stories. We've already done terribly by you before. We're just doing terribly by you again.
No, but like I want to make this point. Like we're trying to, like, it's not that we're necessarily committing to one deal or another. We're trying to figure out what a deal would look like. And so, like, this counter proposal is certainly something that I could see happening. The deal that Mike sent me is certainly something that I could see happening. I tell my listeners this all the time, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. When you get to trades, like, forget some of the details for a little bit. You just want to kind of find what the framework of it looks like. So you do this exercise, say, okay, this is what the Magic have to offer when they go out into the trade market. This is what the Blazers are potentially looking for when they go out into the trade market. These are the kind of deals you're going to get. Whether you think that juice is worth the squeeze, I don't know. That's ultimately what Jeff Weltman has to decide. But like, we have all the information, say, okay, this is what a trade would look like. Is that worth it? Is that something you can build on? Is that something that needs to shrink? Is that something that's just, leave the table, come back to it in February, because all these deals will likely still be there in February. That's really what the exercise is about. And so, I don't know. Like, Simons fits a lot of, checks a lot of boxes for the Magic.
He does. He does seem to be the thing they need, but it's hard.
And like, honestly, from the Portland, and like, this is my concern, and maybe this is where we can end the show. Aside from just getting off of Simons' money, why is Portland interested in Wendell Carter? If they have DeAndre Ayton, if they have Rob Williams.
He's a backup center. He's a backup center, like, for them, and he doesn't have a path to be a starting center. I don't think you could play him next to DeAndre Ayton because you don't have enough shooting there. And Anthony Black is another like skinny guard type. He's big, so I think he could play a little bit of that hybrid wing position next to the two young guards because he's like 6'6", maybe 6'7".
And the Magic played him mostly as a 2-3. They didn't use him at all as a point guard this summer, which
right.
is
So
bizarre.
Yeah. So he could play a little bit as that playmaking wing. It's not ideal, right? This isn't the thing that you get, okay, like unless you think Black's going to be a star. This isn't a player where you get this is like another crack at a first round pick and a young, intriguing piece in Anthony Black and Wendell Carter Jr. to make the money work. And if Wendell Carter Jr. looks good, his money kind of lines up with DeAndre Ayton's money and you can make a decision on which one you want to keep. It's not an idea. It's not a perfect trade. I don't think this is like highly, highly appealing, but I think this is close because young flyer on a young player like Anthony Black, another first round pick in 2025, and a player who could play in the rotation, a young player who could play in the rotation and maybe be a little bit better. Although Wendell Carter did not have a great playoff. So
he did not, he didn't have a good season. Like he was dealing with the hand injury all year. Like I think it was literally 2 games after the Magic played Portland. He broke his hand going up for a rebound in Utah. And like, he was like, he's having surgery on it again. Like he's had injury issues too. So you're trading 2, in our finalized deal here, you're trading 2 injury-prone centers who do very different things. On the Magic side, they're getting the guard that they probably need to help set the table. They're getting an above-the-rim defender at center, which they probably need. So they're getting 2 starters out of this thing for, their starting center and a rookie that couldn't crack the playoff rotation, plus a first-round pick that's probably going to be in the late teens, early 20s for a team that's not playing their rookies anyway. And you've got another pick in the first round in 2025 to back you up. So from that perspective, it certainly feels like a deal that could benefit the Magic. If there's obviously risks there they're taking, but like I said, I still think I'm a little skeptical that this is something that satisfies both sides of the table enough to make a deal happen. As much as Magic fans want to bring Anfernee Simons back home to Orlando, Altamont Springs native, named for Anfernee Hardaway, as enticing as that is, there are some hurdles to get over to make something like this work.
I was going to go the other way. I was going to say,
really?
think we nailed it. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, good. Then let's do it.
Perfect job. I think we just
Problem is he can't wear number 1. That's the only issue.
Oh, well, he wore 24 early in his career, so we can go back to that, I believe. So,
but I mean, kid named Anfernee back home in Orlando, wearing number 1.
Make it happen.
Jonathan Isaac's only got so many years left in Orlando.
Dear listeners, if you're listening to Locked On Magic, I appreciate you. Come back for it tomorrow. It's available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. If you're listening to Locked On Blazers, same deal. Free on all platforms, coming at you each and every weekday. Tell your friends about the programs and then come back and listen to tomorrow's shows. Thanks, Philip. It was a treat.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'll see you back in February.
Indeed.